The Magic Paintbrush, Chapter 16. The Skylance's bank of buttons and levers stared up at Amy. Each was a different color and shape, and together they were as luscious as a candy shop. The only thing Amy had ever driven was a bumper car at Coney Island. This hardly felt like the same thing, especially since the goal was to not crash into anything. Still, this wasn't an ordinary aircraft. It was the Skylance, her own creation. She grabbed the biggest lever, a pale baby blue, and yanked it down. The engines ignited and rotated downward, blasting the sand beneath them into glass. Amy let out a startled squeak. Luna whooped. Emboldened, Amy jabbed the apple green button closest to her. The Skylance's sail swirled into motion, a giant canvas corkscrew. They lurched into the air, and the beach grew smaller below them, until even the full-sized airplanes looked like toys. "It's working," Luna said. "It's working." "I can see that." Amy wrenched the steering wheel and screamed as the aircraft banked left. "I wish it would work slower." Luna lost his footing and scrabbled into her, knocking them both onto the floor. She turned the wheel in the opposite direction, righting the ship, then side-eyed the jade paintbrush. If it could laugh, it would be laughing now. "Evangeline and Maximilian never had problems like this," she muttered. She surveyed the cockpit again, searching for the right controls to stop their ascent and direct them forward instead of up. Her gaze landed on a hand crank. A memory surfaced her 8-year-old building the Skylance out of the dining room chairs and throw pillows, arguing with Diego about who got to drive first. She'd stolen her mom's old-fashioned ice cream maker to be part of the control panel. Now, eyeing the crank in front of her, Amy saw her little kid self grasp the handle, heard herself cry, "Thrusters coming online!" She wasn't even sure what that meant. She must have lifted it from a movie, but she'd always shouted it all the time. She grabbed the hand crank. Who had put this here? She hadn't included it in her painting. She hadn't even remembered it until a moment ago. Had the paintbrush extracted it from her memory? The handle resisted her. "Help me!" she called to Luna. Together, they strained at the crank until it turned, building speed with every rotation. Something clinked and clanked deep within the Skylance. Outside, a second set of engines lowered into position. Unlike the main pair, they pointed sternward. They ignited. The Skylance shot forward. They were finally on their way. "Thrusters online," Amy whispered. Then she jumped up and down and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Thrusters online!" Luna jumped with her, the two of them dancing around the cockpit, breathless with joy. The longer they flew, the more Amy got the hang of controls. She perfected keeping the Skylance balanced in midair, tweaking the thrusters in the right direction, steering without tipping the ship to one side. Luna was a stalwart first mate and confident navigator. With his head out the sunroof, he called directions down to Amy. Sometimes they'd circle a patch of sky for a while, but he always picked up the scent again. Amy couldn't believe it. Here she was, zooming over the ocean in a ship she'd pulled from her imagination. Even when the sky cracked open and rain poured down, it only added to the adventure. The waves rolled high in the storm. Lightning split the clouds. Thunder growled and boomed and roared like a wild beast. Surely they were gaining on the monster. Surely they'd see it on the horizon soon. But when sunset came, they were still whizzing through the air. The storm had petered out to a drizzle, and Luna watched dolphins chase a school of fish and licked his lips. "So how about dinner, huh?" Amy's own stomach gurgled. She thought fondly of the milk tea boba she'd tossed aside so long ago. There wasn't a scrap of food in the Skylance. I could paint us something, but you remember the orange and the chocolate. I can't promise it'll turn out tasty. I'm not picky, Luna said as he took over the steering wheel. Food is food. You only say that because you didn't try the chowder ice cream. She was a little less nervous this time as she opened the sketchbook. There were all her failed paintings, yes, but there were the drawings of Luna and the skylands, too. She thought about practical things first. Sandwiches and egg fried rice and roast chicken. Things her parents would have painted if they could paint dinner instead of cooking it. But she was starting to suspect that the brush didn't like practical, or at least it didn't like the mundane. Every normal thing Amy tried painting turned not so normal. I did promise you boba, she said to Luna. With a flourish, she painted a giant cup, layered full with multicolored slush, pink for strawberry, white for lychee, green for apple, yellow for mango. She dotted the drink with tapioca pearls and popping pearls, and when she felt that presence in her mind, she didn't fight it. She let it peer at her painting and add touches of its own, though she tried to guide it away from anything that would make the finished design inedible. A pair of curlicue straws was the final touch. The painting glowed, and the drink popped out, 3 feet tall, larger than Amy had imagined it. But that was all right. The flavors were also a little different than expected. The apple tangier, the mango more like orange, but that was okay too. The biggest surprise, though, was how each boba pearl contained musical notes. After chewing each pearl, Amy opened her mouth and a sound shot out. A thundering trumpet, a ringing piano, a guitar strum. She and Luna slurped slush and ate boba and sang at each other until the sun set golden on the horizon. It was the best dinner of Amy's life. Night fell, and a universe of stars broke open above them. The constellations seemed so close, as if she could reach out and feel them against her skin like jewels. She wondered what would happen if she drew herself a star, then decided that some things were better left as mysteries. The ship's engines lulled her to sleep, and when she woke again, the sun was high in the sky, and Luna was directing the craft. He pointed at a distant shadow. "Look, Amy, land."